In this modern building, where the tinted windows reflect the cold and distant glow of a grey sky, the atmosphere is always tense, almost palpable. Each step on the immaculate marble resonates as a reminder of the incessant competition that animates the corridors. The ground is cold, and the air seems frozen in an atmosphere where false smiles and too dry handshakes hide all-consuming ambitions. This is where Leah works, in this high-end marketing company, among colleagues who vie for success, but where the shadow of racism and prejudice permeates every corner of the building. Leah, a black woman in her 30s, has found her place in this world where recognition seems reserved for those who know how to sell themselves. Discreet, professional, and determined, she has learned to navigate this world while being both invisible and indispensable. His ideas, however brilliant and often innovative, sometimes come up against an invisible ceiling, a ceiling that is imposed on him without ever openly admitting it. Despite her exceptional skills, Leah prefers to stay in the background, far from the spotlight and the praise that often comes with power games and flattery. She concentrates on her work and does not seek recognition or glitter. But not everyone appreciates his modesty. She holds the position of project manager, a key role within the company. Its successes are numerous, its campaigns crowned with success, and yet, despite this, it constantly finds itself relegated to the shadows. An invisible phenomenon that deprives it of the attention it deserves. A black woman in this environment, in this leadership role, is often seen as an exception and not as a norm. Those around him often see his success as a simple accident, and they emphasize it without scruple. Leah knows it, she feels it in every gesture, in every barely concealed smile, in the awkward silences when she enters a room. At the top of this cold and calculated hierarchy is M. Dufresne, a man in his 50s, the very archetype of the arrogant director. His well-groomed appearance, impeccably tailored suits, and distant gaze betray his insatiable desire for power and control. The simple fact that he occupies such a position seems to him to have sufficient legitimacy to stifle all the voices that do not correspond to his image. His sharp remarks and sharp criticisms are often masked under a polite smile, but anyone with a modicum of intuition can sense the tension underlying his words. He doesn't like Leah. He does not hate her because of her work, which he nevertheless recognizes in private, but because he is incapable of accepting that a black woman can occupy such a high position in a company of her caliber. This is not a simple challenge to his authority, it is a questioning of the established order, an affront to his vision of the world where women and minorities have no place in positions of power. Dufresne does everything he can to minimize Leah. During meetings, he cuts off his ideas, reclassifying them as too ambitious or not refined enough. He smiles condescendingly when she speaks, as if he's only listening to confirm his own prejudices. Leah does not react. She knows that fighting against this form of injustice would be a never-ending battle. She is content to give the best of herself, with the hope that one day, her efforts will speak for her. But that day has not yet arrived. The day everything changes, the air in the building seems heavier than usual. The sounds of keyboards, telephones and discussions mix with palpable tension. The campaign for a prestigious client that she recently won should have been a moment for her. It was the opportunity she was waiting for to finally be recognized, to be seen at the height of her talent. The results are exceptional. Customer feedback is positive, almost admiring. She has exceeded expectations, and yet, it is the shadow of devaluation that hangs over her. As she walks past the offices, her colleagues exchange discreet smiles. Some murmur compliments that she doesn't hear, others remain silent, clinging to the conversation, as if to avoid finding themselves too close to an uncomfortable subject. Leah ignores him and heads towards her post, absorbed in her thoughts. But that day, a surprise awaits him. "Leah, we need to talk." Mr. Dufresne's voice, cold and authoritarian, echoes in the corridor. She stops for a moment, hesitating. This is not normal. It is not her habit to be called in this way, with unjustified urgency. She goes to Dufresne's office. His steps are measured, but anxiety begins to slowly seep into his mind. When she enters the office, the atmosphere is different, heavier. Dufresne sits behind his desk, surrounded by papers and files as if he were preparing a crucial report. He finally looks up, a cold, almost falsely friendly smile stretching his lips. "I noticed," he said, giving a contemptuous look. "The presentation you gave to our client the other day lacked certain subtleties. This is not what I expected from a project manager of your level." Leah, although surprised, remains calm. She knows this is not real professional criticism. It's a sneak attack, a way to remind him of his place. She nods slowly, not responding immediately. She senses the familiarity of this situation, one of those situations where you are judged not for your work, but for something else, something that has nothing to do with skills. You probably misinterpreted the customer's expectations. Maybe this kind of presentation isn't for you. He said this in a condescending tone, as if he was doing her a favor by offering his criticism. Leah holds back her anger. She knows that what he is looking for is not a dialogue, but an opportunity to demean someone he perceives as inferior to him, to confirm that he is in control of the situation. When he abruptly interrupts her, her whole body tenses. "You know, Leah," he said in a smug tone, "I think maybe you should reconsider your place here. Maybe this isn't the environment for you after all." The words fall like a hammer, heavy and cold. Leah remains frozen for a moment, her gaze fixed on him. This is more than just a professional review. It is an attempt to destroy his dignity. It is not simply his work that he attacks, but his place in the company, in this world, in this society. Her hands tighten on the edge of the back of her seat, her nails digging into the leather. But she doesn't flinch. She looks up, meeting Dufresne's gaze, his implacable face. Dufresne," she said in a calm but firm voice, "I assure you that I am where I need to be, and I intend to continue to prove you wrong." She gets up slowly, without a backward glance, and leaves the office with unwavering dignity. But in his heart, a change occurs. Something powerful, a profound decision, takes root in her. She will never again tolerate humiliation, whether it is hidden in the form of criticism or not. She's going to fight. The next day, Leah goes to work, but something inside her has changed. She is no longer the same. The incident with Dufresne, although painful and degrading, resonated deeply in her mind, and instead of allowing herself to be crushed by this humiliation, she decided to use it as a fuel for her revenge. She vowed not to be the passively accepted victim. Leah knew that in such an unforgiving environment, power often lies in information, and she would become the agent of change, quietly but with fierce determination. As soon as she arrives, she adopts a more methodical attitude. She doesn't forget to smile and behave professionally, but a small spark of defiance shines in her eyes. She now observes every detail, every movement of Dufresne, looking for flaws. She knows the company better than anyone. Its internal structures, its weak points, its gray areas. As project manager, Leah has always had access to sensitive information. What she had previously ignored, out of respect for her colleagues and her work, now becomes a weapon that she patiently sharpens. As the weeks go by, she collects testimonies. She takes discreet notes during informal conversations, uses contacts she has made over the years to access internal documents. The evidence is piling up. Leah discovers that several of her colleagues have witnessed inappropriate behavior on the part of Dufresne, pressure placed on employees not to report questionable practices, decisions made outside the rules, and even violations of ethical standards in the context of projects he supervised. Leah, far from letting herself be overwhelmed by anger or despair, methodically brings together the elements of her case. She begins to organize discreet meetings with certain employees. Witnesses, sometimes hesitant, confided information to him that they had kept silent for fear of reprisals. Leah reassures them, explaining that the time has come to speak and break the silence that protects abuses of power. She becomes the catalyst for this collective awareness. More and more voices join hers, and a small community of support forms around her, although still in the shadows. A month later, the company organizes a big meeting with the most influential shareholders, customers, and partners. It's a major event, the company's showcase, where Dufresne always shines with his arrogance. He is proud of his latest project, which he presents as a huge success. This is his chance to show the world his genius and his power. In his speeches, he does not hesitate to criticize those who, according to him, are not up to par, notably Leah. He doesn't even imagine that she could be capable of confronting him, so convinced is he of her dominant position. But instead of the silent humiliation he had anticipated, Leah speaks. Her voice is calm, composed, but firm, and each word she speaks seems to weigh heavily in the air. She begins by recalling the principles that should guide the company, before gradually exposing damning facts about the management of Dufresne. She talks about the flaws in the projects he oversaw, the errors he deliberately ignored, and the pressure he put on employees to cover up questionable practices. Leah never mentions her skin color, but what is left unsaid is obvious. She talks about the systemic discrimination he allowed to flourish under his authority, the threats he made to suppress the truth, and the injustices he encouraged to preserve his power. The evidence she presents is irrefutable: recordings, emails, anonymous testimonies. Everything that Dufresne had done to manipulate the facts and hide his corruption is exposed before the eyes of shareholders and customers. As his presentation progresses, Dufresne loses his composure. The redness on his face testifies to the shame that is building within him. His hands are shaking, and he is unable to mask the anxiety that is overwhelming him. He understands that the facade he has carefully cultivated for years is cracking before everyone's eyes. Leah, for her part, remains calm and impassive, holding her position with the dignity that she has always lacked, but which she now has in abundance. The silence that settles after his revelations is heavy with meaning. Dufresne was immediately summoned for an internal investigation. His colleagues, who had until then admired his power, begin to look at him differently. The charisma he thought he embodied is shattered, replaced by the silent contempt of those who saw the truth come to light. The same respect he demanded from them is now turning against him. The truth has been revealed, and Dufresne finds himself alone facing his actions. As for Leah, she is not looking for revenge. She never wanted to destroy Dufresne for her own glory. She is content to return to her post, stronger and more respected than ever. She never stopped focusing on her work, and that is precisely what led her to this resounding victory. His calm, his strategy and his integrity are his true weapons. She did not seek to humiliate Dufresne, but to reveal the truth which ultimately destroyed him far more effectively than any personal attack. The days pass, and Leah sees a change in the company. Employees start to respect her more. They realize that true power lies in the ability to remain true to one's principles, even when crushed under the weight of prejudice. Leah has shown that you can be a force for change without giving up your values, and this inspires those around her. As for Dufresne, he is fired, and his name now becomes an example not to be followed in the industry. His arrogance and abuse of power led him to his own downfall, and he eventually understood, in his isolation, that it was through his contempt for others that he ended up destroying himself. Leah learned that dignity, when defended with clarity and courage, can bring down even the greatest tyrants. She does not need to shout, fight physically, or seek honors to assert her power. She is a woman of principles, and no one can take that away from her.